The German battleship Tirpitz represented the ultimate naval threat to the Allied lines of communication in the North Atlantic. After its commissioning in early 1941, the massive vessel immediately became the most feared component of the German Navy's surface fleet, often described as the second of the Bismarck-class battleships. Her mere presence in Norwegian fjords forced the Royal Navy and the Royal Air Force to dedicate immense resources to surveillance and defense of the vital Arctic convoys carrying supplies to the Soviet Union. This singular ship tied up battleships, aircraft carriers, and entire squadrons of bomber aircraft that could have been used elsewhere. The strategic doctrine of the German Navy centered on the concept of maintaining a powerful naval force in existence, thereby tying down significant enemy resources. The Tirpitz was a silent, powerful deterrent, a ghost ship lurking in the fjords, occasionally sallying out to strike fear into the hearts of merchant mariners and their naval escorts. The threat was demonstrated vividly during the infamous Convoy PQ-17 debacle, when fear of an attack by the Tirpitz caused the dispersal of the convoy, leading to the catastrophic loss of 24 merchant ships to German Air Force and German Navy U-boats. Winston Churchill, the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, recognized that the Tirpitz was an operational liability and demanded its immediate destruction. He maintained the ship was a beast that must be hunted down and eliminated. This began a years-long struggle involving highly specialized equipment, incredible feats of endurance, and daring raids in the most inhospitable climates on Earth. The task was initially deemed impossible by many, given the heavy armor of the ship, its natural camouflage, and the robust anti-aircraft defenses provided by the surrounding mountains. Numerous attempts were made using midget submarines, dive bombers, and conventional heavy bombers, but the vessel remained intact. The German Navy positioned the battleship deep within the northern fjords, allowing the surrounding geography to act as a shield against torpedoes and low-level bombing runs. The crew were meticulous in applying camouflage and utilized extensive smoke screens whenever Allied reconnaissance aircraft approached, frustrating the efforts of the Royal Air Force photographic interpretation units and prolonging the relentless hunt for the formidable warship. The Royal Navy realized that conventional attacks against the heavily defended lair of the German battleship Tirpitz were proving too costly and ineffective. They decided to employ a radical new weapon, the X-craft midget submarine. This daring plan, known as Operation Source, was conceived as an unprecedented strike against the heart of the German Navy in Norway. The operation required 6 specially trained crews to navigate treacherous waters, evade extensive detection nets, and penetrate the numerous physical barriers protecting the battleship deep within fjord. The X-craft were designed to sneak past the formidable anti-submarine defenses and deposit powerful side charges directly beneath the German battleship Tirpitz. These charges contained enough explosive power to breach the hull of the ship, which even massive aerial bombs had failed to do. In September 1943, the midget submarines were towed across the vast expanse of the North Sea by larger submarines. This journey was an ordeal in itself, with crews battling rough weather and extreme fatigue while confined to the cramped, volatile conditions of the small vessels. The penetration of the fjord defenses proved harrowing, demanding exceptional navigation and courage from the X-craft commanders. 2 of the midget submarines, X-6 commanded by Lieutenant Donald Cameron and X-7 commanded by Lieutenant Basil Place, successfully reached the battleship's mooring. Despite being detected late in the approach and coming under immediate fire from the anti-aircraft guns of the ship, the crews managed to plant their 4-ton explosive charges directly beneath the hull of the German battleship Tirpitz before scuttling their own vessels and being captured. Although the attack did not sink the Tirpitz, it caused significant structural damage, rendering the battleship non-operational for 6 months. The tremendous underwater shock damaged the engine room, buckled the keel plates, and destroyed the 2 main turbine generators. This success proved the viability of unconventional warfare and bought the Allies crucial time during the height of the Arctic convoy season. The daring action earned both Lieutenant Cameron and Lieutenant Place the Victoria Cross, the highest military decoration for gallantry of the British Commonwealth. Despite the success of the midget submarine operation, the German battleship Tirpitz was not permanently defeated. The German Navy immediately began extensive repairs in the relative safety of Kafjord, utilizing repair ships and crews brought in specifically for the monumental task. Intelligence reports indicated that the battleship was slowly being restored to operational status, renewing the persistent threat to the Arctic convoys. It became clear to the Allied command that the ultimate destruction of the vessel required a follow-up strike before it could put to sea. This led to Operation Tungsten in April 1944, a massive effort orchestrated by the Royal Navy's Fleet Air Arm utilizing several aircraft carriers, including HMS Victorious and HMS Furious. The Royal Navy launched a series of concentrated air raids using Barracuda dive bombers and Corsair fighter aircraft. The goal was to inflict crippling damage with armor-piercing bombs while the ship was stationary and vulnerable during its ongoing repairs. The attack was timed to take place during a period of favorable weather and lighting conditions. The initial assault achieved considerable surprise, catching the German crew unprepared and disrupting the deployment of the smoke screen generators. In the first wave, numerous bombs struck the deck and superstructure of the German battleship Tirpitz, causing substantial damage and large numbers of casualties among the crew. However, the thick armor of the main deck successfully deflected the heaviest bombs from penetrating the ship's vital machinery spaces. The subsequent wave reinforced the damage, but still failed to achieve the desired effect of sinking the battleship. While Operation Tungsten was tactically successful, hitting the Tirpitz with over a dozen bombs and taking the vessel out of action for another several months, it also marked the practical limit of what the Fleet Air Arm could achieve. The repeated strikes highlighted the extreme difficulty of delivering a payload capable of breaching the heavily protected heart of the battleship. This frustration ultimately necessitated the transfer of responsibility for the final destruction of the German battleship Tirpitz from the Royal Navy to the long-range heavy bomber units of the Royal Air Force. Following the Royal Navy's unsuccessful attempts to sink the German battleship Tirpitz, the task fell to the Royal Air Force Bomber Command. The challenge was immense. The battleship remained nestled deep within the heavily fortified Kafjord, far beyond the operational range of most heavy bombers. To circumvent this, the Royal Air Force conceived Operation Paravane, a daring long-range raid that would involve Lancaster bombers modified with extra fuel tanks and carrying newly developed, massive, Tallboy, earthquake bombs. The Tallboy bomb, designed by Barnes Wallis, was a revolutionary weapon. Weighing nearly 12,000 pounds, it was engineered to penetrate deep into the ground or through heavily armored targets before detonating, creating an underground cavern or causing catastrophic structural damage from the shockwave. Its aerodynamic design allowed it to achieve supersonic speeds when dropped from high altitude, ensuring deep penetration. Only the robust Avro Lancaster heavy bomber was capable of carrying such a formidable weapon. On September 15, 1944, a force of Lancaster bombers from numbers 9 and 617 squadrons, based in Yagodnik, Russia, launched their attack. The aircraft flew a circuitous route over the Arctic, enduring extreme cold and the constant threat of German Air Force interception. Upon reaching Kafjord, the bombers encountered heavy anti-aircraft fire and the familiar smoke screen deployed by the German crew. Despite these challenges, the precision of the bombing run was unprecedented for such a long-range mission. One Tallboy bomb struck the German battleship Tirpitz squarely on the bow, passing clean through the ship before detonating in the seabed beneath. This caused significant underwater damage, compromising the vessel's watertight integrity and causing major flooding. While the ship did not immediately sink, the damage inflicted by Operation Paravane rendered the Tirpitz unseaworthy and incapable of further combat operations. The German Navy made the grim decision to move the crippled battleship to a new, less secure anchorage near Tromsø, intending to use it as a floating battery. The strategic relocation of the German battleship Tirpitz to a new anchorage near Tromsø, while intended to be a defensive measure, inadvertently placed the vessel within striking distance of bomber bases in Scotland. The German Navy positioned the ship close to the shore, hoping the seabed would provide a degree of protection and support should the ship sustain heavy damage. However, the new location also removed the natural mountain shields that had previously defended Kafjord, making the battleship vulnerable to sustained, heavy bombing raids by the Royal Air Force. Immediately following the successful damage inflicted during Operation Paravane, the Royal Air Force planned Operation Obviate, seeking to finish the job before the long winter set in. The weather, however, proved to be the more tenacious enemy than the German defenses. Squadron commanders faced frequent heavy cloud cover, ice, and extreme turbulence over the northern approach routes. These environmental factors severely complicated the aiming and effectiveness of the high-altitude bombing required for the massive Tallboy ordnance. The first attempt under Operation Obviate in October 1944 was plagued by these difficult conditions. Though the Lancaster bombers found the area, the persistent cloud cover forced the aiming crews to drop their Tallboys blind. The results were disappointing. While some bombs landed near the German battleship Tirpitz, no direct hits were achieved, and the vessel remained defiant. The failure highlighted the critical importance of clear weather for the accuracy needed to defeat the ship's heavy armor and fixed position. Despite the setback, the continuous attempts by the Royal Air Force were having a devastating effect on the morale of the German crew and placing an impossible logistical strain on the German Navy. The Tirpitz, now essentially a fixed-gun battery, was a constant liability, demanding resources that were desperately needed on other fronts. The British command knew that time was running short and pressed for one final, decisive strike before the Arctic darkness and impenetrable winter weather completely halted all aerial operations. The final assault on the German battleship Tirpitz was designated Operation Catechism, planned for November 12, 1944. This raid was the last realistic opportunity for the Royal Air Force to sink the ship before winter rendered the high-altitude precision bombing impossible. Crucially, the air crews were blessed with clear, bright weather over the target area near Tromsø, a fortunate turn of events that had eluded all previous attempts. This time, the bomber force, again composed of Lancasters from numbers 9 and 617 squadrons, carried a full load of Tallboy bombs, aimed for maximum penetration. The German defenses at Tromsø were less robust than those at Fjords, relying primarily on anti-aircraft batteries positioned on the nearby shoreline and the intrinsic difficulty of hitting a heavily armored target from extreme altitude. As the heavy bombers approached, the air raid warning sounded, and the German crew prepared for the inevitable attack. However, the lack of the effective smoke screen capability enjoyed in Fjords meant the battleship was fully exposed, silhouetted against the clear Norwegian water. The bombers executed their attack run in meticulous formation. The first Tallboys missed, exploding harmlessly in the water near the hull, but their near misses contributed to the psychological strain on the German defenders. Then, at the height of the attack, several bombs struck true. One bomb hit the port side near the aircraft catapult, while two others penetrated the main armor belt amidships and exploded deep within the ship's structure, causing truly catastrophic internal damage that instantly sealed the battleship's fate. The explosions below deck ignited large fires and caused massive lists to port as water rushed into the vessel's compromised compartments. Within minutes of the devastating hits, the German battleship Tirpitz capsized completely. As the ship rolled over, its massive hull trapped hundreds of crew members inside the inverted wreck. The protracted campaign to eliminate the lonely Queen of the North was finally over, confirming the superiority of heavy, precision aerial bombardment against even the most formidable naval targets. The immediate aftermath of Operation Catechism was characterized by chaos and a desperate scramble to save the German crew trapped within the capsized hull of the German battleship Tirpitz. The ship had rolled over so rapidly that many men were unable to evacuate, particularly those in the lower decks and engine rooms. German Navy rescue teams, aided by local Norwegian civilians, immediately began cutting into the massive, inverted hull with acetylene torches in an attempt to reach any survivors who might be alive inside the air pockets. The operation was fraught with danger. The massive structure of the battleship was unstable, and the rising tide threatened to completely submerge parts of the hull where men were thought to be trapped. Despite the heroic efforts of the rescue teams working tirelessly for over 24 hours, the number of casualties was staggering. Of the almost 2,000 men aboard the German battleship Tirpitz, well over 900 were killed during the final raid and subsequent sinking. The final destruction of the Tirpitz was a momentous victory for the Allied war effort, achieved primarily by the perseverance of the Royal Air Force. The news reverberated throughout the naval commands globally, confirming that the threat to the crucial Arctic convoys had been permanently neutralized. The removal of the Tirpitz released significant Royal Navy fleet units, including battleships and aircraft carriers, which were immediately redeployed to other critical theaters of the war, most notably the Pacific. The sunken battleship remained a stark monument to the lengthy hunt. Her massive hull lay on its side in the shallow waters near Hakoya Island, a constant reminder of the strategic importance she once held. Over the subsequent years, the wreckage was gradually dismantled by Norwegian and German salvage companies, a lengthy process that recovered the vast amounts of steel and material from the proud but ultimately defeated warship, signaling the end of an era for the German Navy's surface fleet. The sinking of the German battleship Tirpitz marked not only the end of one formidable warship, but also a fundamental shift in naval strategy. The sustained campaign by the Royal Air Force demonstrated the decisive power of heavy, precision air attack against even the most heavily armored surface ships. This success validated the enormous investment in large weapons like the Tallboy bomb and underlined the increasing vulnerability of large capital ships without overwhelming air superiority. For the German Navy, the loss of the Tirpitz was the final crushing blow to its surface fleet ambitions. Along with the earlier sinking of the German battleship Bismarck, the destruction of the Tirpitz symbolized the failure of Germany's attempt to challenge the Royal Navy on the high seas using traditional battleship forces. The remaining major German warships were relegated to limited coastal duties or scuttled, leaving the German Navy's offensive capabilities almost entirely reliant on its U-boat fleet for the remainder of the war. The long hunt for the lonely Queen of the North became one of the most celebrated and complex episodes of the European conflict. It involved coordination between multiple branches of the British military, including the Royal Navy Fleet Air Arm, the Royal Air Force Bomber Command, and specialized commando units. The perseverance shown by the crews of the midget submarines and the high-altitude bomber pilots underscored the Allied commitment to maintaining the vital Arctic lifeline to the Soviet Union. In the years following the war, the massive remains of the German battleship Tirpitz were slowly broken up and salvaged. Today, pieces of the vessel, including large sections of armor plate, can be found scattered across Norway, serving as historical artifacts. The legacy of the ship is less about its combat achievements, which were minimal, and more about the immense strategic influence it wielded merely by existing, an influence that required years of concerted effort and sacrifice to finally overcome.